A morning like any other. Gabriella Hayes hurried down Fifth Avenue, clutching her coffee cup while trying not to spill it on her white blouse. The New York morning was crisp and beautiful, with autumn leaves dancing across the sidewalk. She was already running 15 minutes late for work at Pierce Technologies, and her boss would definitely notice. At 27, Gabriella had worked hard to build her career in marketing. She was known for her creativity and dedication, always staying late to perfect her presentations. Her colleagues respected her work ethic, even if they sometimes forgot she existed outside the office. Gabriella preferred it that way. Being invisible meant avoiding office drama and focusing on what really mattered, doing excellent work. Today was supposed to be just another Tuesday. She had planned to wear her usual gray pantsuit and blend into the background during the morning meeting. But life had other plans. The wardrobe crisis. Last night, Gabriella had accidentally knocked over a full glass of red wine onto her closet. The purple liquid had splashed across every single one of her work suits, staining them beyond repair. She had stayed up until midnight trying to clean them, but nothing worked. This morning, staring at her ruined wardrobe, Gabriella had panicked. She needed something professional to wear, but everything suitable was at the dry cleaners. In desperation, she grabbed the only clean dress hanging in her closet, a soft coral sundress with delicate white flowers. Her sister had given her this dress last summer, insisting it brought out the warm tones in her brown skin and made her dark eyes sparkle. Gabriella had never worn it because it felt too feminine, too noticeable for the office. The dress had short sleeves and a fitted waist that flared into a flowing skirt just above her knees. It was beautiful, but completely different from her usual style. Standing in front of her mirror that morning, Gabriella had felt uncertain. The dress made her look softer, more approachable. Her natural curls, usually pulled back tightly, now framed her face in gentle waves. She looked pretty, and that worried her. Would people take her seriously? Would they think she was unprofessional? But with no other options and the clock ticking, she had grabbed her black cardigan and rushed out the door. Walking into Pierce Technologies. The lobby of Pierce Technologies was all glass and steel, modern and intimidating. Gabriella usually loved the sleek design, but today she felt exposed. Several colleagues did double takes as she walked past, and she heard whispered comments about her appearance. Rachel Kim, her best friend from the marketing department, caught up with her at the elevator. Rachel's eyes widened with approval. "Girl, that dress is stunning on you," Rachel said, linking her arm through Gabriella's. "Why have you been hiding this look from us?" "Why an emergency?" Gabriella explained briefly. This was the only clean thing left. "Well, wine emergencies should happen more often. You look amazing." Gabriella felt her cheeks warm. She pulled her cardigan tighter around herself, suddenly very aware of how different she looked today. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped inside along with several other employees. That was when everything changed. The billionaire's gaze. Damian Pierce stepped into the elevator just as the doors were closing. At 39, he was one of the youngest billionaires in America, having built Pierce Technologies from a small startup into a global empire. He was tall and commanding, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples and intense gray eyes that missed nothing. Gabriella had seen him around the office, of course, but always from a distance. He usually moved through the building surrounded by assistants and executives, too busy to notice ordinary employees like her. She knew he was brilliant and driven, the kind of leader who demanded excellence from everyone around him. Today, Damian Pierce walked into the elevator alone, checking his phone with a slight frown. The other employees immediately made room for him, pressing against the walls with nervous respect. Gabriella tried to become invisible, staring at the floor numbers as they lit up one by one. She was intensely aware of her appearance, of how out of place she must look in this professional setting. Then she felt it, someone watching her. She glanced up and found Damian Pierce staring at her with an expression she could not quite read. His gray eyes traveled from her face to the coral dress and back again, and something shifted in his features. Surprise, maybe, or interest. For a moment that felt frozen in time, their eyes met. Gabriella felt her breath catch in her throat. There was something magnetic about his gaze, something that made her heart beat faster. The elevator chimed, breaking the spell. Damien looked away first, returning his attention to his phone as the doors opened on the executive floor. He stepped out without a word, leaving Gabriella wondering if she had imagined the entire exchange. Whispers and glances. The marketing department buzzed with its usual Tuesday energy. Gabriella settled at her desk, trying to focus on preparing for the weekly strategy meeting. But she could not stop thinking about that moment in the elevator. "You okay?" Rachel asked, rolling her chair over to Gabriella's cubicle. "You seem distracted." "Just tired," Gabriella lied. "Stayed up late dealing with the wine disaster." Before Rachel could respond, their supervisor called everyone into the conference room. The weekly meeting was starting. Gabriella gathered her presentation materials and followed her colleagues down the hall. She had worked hard on this campaign proposal for their newest client, and she was determined to make it count. Her unusual outfit would not distract her from doing excellent work. The conference room filled quickly with marketing team members, all settling into their usual seats. Gabriella chose her typical spot near the back, close to the projector screen. Then Patricia Monroe, the HR director, walked in with an announcement that changed everything. "Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that Mr. Pierce will be joining us today. He wants to personally review the campaign proposals for the Henderson account." The room erupted in nervous whispers. Damien Pierce never attended departmental meetings. He had people for that. His presence meant this project was more important than anyone had realized. Gabriella felt her stomach drop. She would have to present her ideas in front of the CEO. The same CEO who had stared at her in the elevator. The same CEO who probably thought she was completely unprofessional for wearing a sundress to work. The presentation that changed everything. Damien Pierce entered the conference room exactly on time, and every conversation stopped. He moved with quiet confidence, nodding at Patricia before taking a seat at the head of the table. His gray eyes scanned the room, pausing briefly when they landed on Gabriella. She looked down at her notes, her heart pounding. The presentations began. One by one, team members stood to share their campaign ideas. Some were good, others mediocre. Damien listened intently to each one, asking sharp questions that made even the senior marketers nervous. Finally, it was Gabriella's turn. She stood on shaky legs, clutching her presentation materials. The coral dress suddenly felt like a spotlight, drawing everyone's attention. She walked to the front of the room, acutely aware of Damien's gaze following her movements. "Good morning," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "My proposal focuses on authentic storytelling to connect with the Henderson account's target demographic." As she spoke, something remarkable happened. Gabriella forgot about her dress, forgot about being nervous, forgot about everything except the work she loved. Her presentation came alive as she described her vision, a campaign that focused on real people and real emotions rather than flashy gimmicks. She showed mock-ups of advertisements featuring everyday individuals sharing genuine experiences. She outlined a social media strategy built on community engagement rather than celebrity endorsements. She presented data showing why authentic connection resonated more deeply with consumers than traditional marketing approaches. When she finished, the room was silent. Then Damien Pierce began a clap. The sound startled everyone, including Gabriella. Slowly, the rest of the team joined in, their applause filling the conference room. "That," Damien said, his gray eyes locked on Gabriella's face, "is exactly the kind of innovative thinking this company needs." "Brilliant work, Miss Hayes." Gabriella felt heat flood her cheeks. "Thank you, Mr. Pierce. I would like to discuss your proposal further. Can you meet me in my office after this meeting concludes?" Every head in the room turned to stare at her. Being summoned to the CEO's office was either very good or very bad, and nobody seemed sure which. "Of course," Gabriella managed to say. As the meeting continued, she could barely focus. Rachel kept shooting her encouraging looks, but Gabriella's mind raced with questions. Why did Damien Pierce want to see her privately? Was it really about the presentation, or was it something else? She thought about that moment in the elevator, the way he had looked at her. She thought about how his eyes had never left her face during her presentation, and she wondered if wearing this dress had been a disaster or a miracle. Walking into the unknown, Gabriella stood outside Damian Pierce's office 30 minutes later, her hand hovering over the door. Through the frosted glass, she could see his silhouette moving behind the massive desk. Her presentation folder felt heavy in her hands, and her heart hammered against her ribs. Before she could knock, the door opened. Damian stood there, having removed his suit jacket. His white shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, making him look less like an intimidating billionaire and more like a regular person. Almost. "Miss Hayes, please come in," he said, stepping aside to let her enter. His office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan. The furniture was sleek and modern, but personal touches caught her eye. A collection of vintage cameras on a shelf, a small succulent garden by the window, and framed photographs of landscapes from around the world. "Thank you for meeting with me," Damian said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "Would you like coffee or tea? Water would be wonderful. Thank you." Gabriella's throat felt dry from nerves. He poured 2 glasses from a crystal pitcher, then sat down not behind his imposing desk, but in the chair next to hers. The gesture surprised her. It felt more like a conversation between equals than a boss speaking to an employee, seeing beyond the surface. "Your presentation was exceptional," Damian began, his gray eyes sincere. "The authenticity angle is exactly what the Henderson account needs. Most marketers want to sell products. You want to build relationships. I believe people can tell when brands are being genuine," Gabriella said, relaxing slightly. "They're tired of being sold to. They want to feel understood." "How did you develop this perspective?" he asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Gabriella hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "I grew up in a small town in Georgia. My parents own a local bakery. They never advertised with fancy campaigns or hired celebrities. They just made great food and treated every customer like family. That bakery supported our entire community for 30 years, not because of marketing, but because of connection." Something shifted in Damian's expression. "That is beautiful and rare in this industry." They talked for over an hour about marketing philosophy, about the difference between selling and serving, about building brands that actually mattered to people. Gabriella found herself forgetting who she was talking to, losing herself in the joy of discussing ideas with someone who truly understood. "I want you to lead the Henderson campaign," Damian said finally. "Full creative control, bigger budget, and a team of your choosing." Gabriella's eyes widened. "Mr. Pierce, I am just a coordinator. There are senior marketers with much more experience." "Experience is not the same as vision," he countered. "You have something those senior marketers lost years ago. You still care about the work, not just the paycheck." I did not know what to say. "Say yes." He smiled, and the expression transformed his entire face. He looked younger, more approachable. "Unless you have concerns about working directly with me. This project would require regular meetings, possibly some after-hours collaboration." The way he said it made Gabriella's pulse quicken. Was she imagining the hint of something personal beneath his professional words? "I would be honored," she said carefully. "When do we start? How about dinner tonight? We can discuss strategy." He paused, seeming to realize how that sounded. "A working dinner, of course. At Gramercy Tavern. 7 o'clock. Gabriella knew she should say no. Accepting felt like crossing an invisible line. But looking into those gray eyes, she found herself nodding. 7 o'clock. An evening of discovery. Gramercy Tavern glowed with warm light and quiet elegance. Gabriella had changed into a simple black dress, something more appropriate for an evening meeting. But she had left her hair down, the curls cascading over her shoulders. Damian was already seated when she arrived, and he stood immediately upon seeing her. "You look lovely," he said, then quickly added, "Professional. You look professionally lovely." She laughed at his awkwardness. "Thank you. You look professionally lovely, too." They ordered dinner and spread campaign notes across the table. For the first hour, they genuinely worked, discussing target demographics and messaging strategies. But gradually, the conversation shifted. Can I ask you something personal? Damien said during dessert. Why do you always try to be invisible at work? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? Before today, I had seen you around the office, but never really noticed you. You dress in neutral colors, sit in the back during meetings, and never speak unless directly asked a question. He studied her face. Someone with your intelligence and creativity should not be hiding. Gabriella set down her fork, considering her answer. I learned early in my career that being noticed often meant dealing with unwanted attention. Men who assumed I was interested in them. Colleagues who resented my success. It was easier to blend in and let my work speak for itself. That is incredibly sad, Damien said quietly. You should not have to make yourself smaller to be safe, says the man who has never had to worry about being taken seriously. You would be surprised. His expression grew distant. People see my success and assume everything came easily. They do not see the years I spent working 18-hour days, the relationships I sacrificed, the loneliness of being at the top. Everyone wants something from me. Nobody just wants to know me. The vulnerability in his voice touched something deep in Gabriella's chest. That sounds exhausting. It is. He met her eyes across the table. Until today, I could not remember the last time someone looked at me like I was just a person. How did I look at you? Like you saw me, not my money or my position. Just me. He reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of touching hers. Do you know how rare that is? Gabriella felt electricity in the air between them. This had stopped being a working dinner a long time ago. Mr. Pierce. Damien, he interrupted gently. When it's just us, please call me Damien. Damien, she said, testing the name on her lips. This feels complicated. It is complicated. He did not move his hand away. But some things are worth being complicated for. The growing connection. Over the following weeks, Gabriella and Damien fell into a pattern. They had legitimate reasons to meet frequently. The Henderson campaign required constant collaboration, but their meetings always lasted longer than necessary, conversations drifting from business into personal territory. They discovered shared interests. Both loved mystery novels. Both had complicated relationships with their families, and both felt like outsiders in the corporate world despite their success. Damien started seeking her opinion on matters beyond the Henderson account. He would call her office to discuss company culture initiatives or ask her perspective on employee satisfaction programs. His assistant, Beverly, began giving Gabriella knowing looks whenever she arrived for meetings. Rachel noticed too. You are glowing, she told Gabriella one afternoon in the break room. And you've been dressing differently. More colors, more personality. The wine emergency helped me realize I was hiding, Gabriella admitted. It is not just the clothes. You smile more. You laugh more. You seem happier. Rachel lowered her voice. Does this have anything to do with all those private meetings with Pierce? We are working on the campaign. Right. Working. Rachel's knowing smile said she did not believe that for a second. The truth was, Gabriella did not know what was happening between her and Damien. They had never crossed any professional lines. Their touches were always accidental. Hands brushing when passing documents, shoulders bumping in crowded elevators. But the tension between them was undeniable. The moment everything changed. It happened on a Thursday evening. They were working late in his office, reviewing campaign materials for a client presentation the next morning. Rain pattered against the windows, and the city lights blurred into watercolor streaks. This is perfect, Damien said, reviewing her latest mock-ups. You have outdone yourself, Gabriella. She loved how he said her name, turning the syllables into something beautiful. It was a team effort. Stop deflecting compliments. You did this. He set down the papers and turned to face her fully. You are remarkable, and I need you to know that. Damien, I'm trying to be professional, he interrupted, his voice rough with emotion. I'm trying to maintain appropriate boundaries, but I cannot stop thinking about you. Every morning, I hope to see you in the elevator. Every meeting, I look for your face in the crowd. Every night, I go home thinking about things you said that made me laugh. Gabriella's heart raced. This could ruin everything. My career, your reputation. I know. He stood, moving to the windows with his hands in his pockets. I have built my entire life on making smart decisions, calculating risks, and staying in control. But it makes me want to throw all that away. She joined him at the window, watching the rain. What are you saying? I'm saying that I am falling in love with you. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes intense. I know it is impractical and complicated and potentially disastrous, but it is true. Gabriella felt tears prick her eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, but I'm terrified. Of what? That this is a fantasy. That you are attracted to the version of me that wore that dress. And when reality sets in, you will realize I'm just an ordinary person who likes reading before bed and eating cereal for dinner. Damien reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. That dress did not change who you are. It just helped me see what was always there. And yes, I want to know about your reading habits and your terrible dinner choices. I want to know everything. This will be so complicated, she whispered. The best things usually are. Then he kissed her, soft and tender and full of promise. Gabriella melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss was everything she had imagined and nothing like she expected. Gentle but passionate, careful but consuming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers. What do we do now? Gabriella asked. Now, he said with a smile, we figure out together, facing the reality. The morning after their kiss, Gabriella woke up with a mixture of joy and terror. She loved Damien Pierce. He loved her back. But love did not erase the complicated reality of their situation. She arrived at work early, hoping to collect her thoughts before facing the office. But Rachel was already at her desk, 2 coffee cups in hand. We need to talk, Rachel said, handing Gabriella a latte. Conference room B is empty. Once inside the private room, Rachel fixed her with a knowing stare. You kissed him. Gabriella's eyes widened. How did you? Please. You walked in here looking like a woman who spent last night making out with a billionaire. And honestly, good for you. But we need to talk about the implications. I know it is complicated. Complicated is an understatement. He is the CEO. You report to him indirectly. There are power dynamics, potential accusations of favoritism, and enough HR concerns to fill a textbook. Rachel's expression softened. But I also see how he looks at you, and how you light up when you talk about him. What should I do? Be honest with HR. Document everything professionally. And most importantly, do not let anyone make you feel like loving him is wrong. Rachel squeezed her hand. You deserve happiness, Gabriella. Even complicated happiness. Making it official. That afternoon, Damien called an unexpected meeting with Patricia Monroe from HR and Jonathan West, his business partner. Gabriella's stomach churned as she walked into the conference room. Thank you for coming, Damien began formally. I need to disclose a personal relationship that has developed between Miss Hayes and myself. Patricia's eyebrows rose, but she remained professional. Go on. We have developed romantic feelings for each other. I want to ensure we handle this appropriately, with full transparency and respect for company policy. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, studying them both. How long has this been going on? The feelings developed over several weeks while working on the Henderson campaign, Gabriella said, finding her voice. We kissed for the first time last night. Nothing inappropriate has occurred during work hours. I want to transfer the Henderson campaign leadership to a different supervisor, Damien continued. Gabriella will report to someone else to eliminate any conflict of interest. Her promotion and salary increase are based solely on merit, which her performance records clearly demonstrate. Patricia made notes on her tablet. I appreciate your transparency. This is the correct way to handle such situations. However, you should be prepared for gossip and scrutiny. We understand, Gabriella said, but we believe this relationship is worth navigating those challenges. Damien reached under the table and squeezed her hand briefly. The gesture was small, but meaningful. Jonathan smiled for the first time. For what it is worth, I have known Damien for 15 years. I have never seen him this happy. If you two can maintain professionalism at work, you have my support. The storm of judgment. Word spread through the office like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone knew about Damien and Gabriella's relationship. The reactions varied dramatically. Some colleagues were supportive, including Rachel and several team members who had worked closely with Gabriella. They saw her talent and knew she earned her success. Others were less kind. Whispers followed Gabriella through the hallways. Anonymous notes appeared on her desk, suggesting she slept her way to promotion. Someone created a cruel nickname for her that circulated through company chat rooms. The worst came during a department meeting when Trevor Banks, a senior marketer who had been passed over for the Henderson campaign, made a pointed comment. "Nice to know what really matters for advancement around here," he said loudly. "Talent or sleeping with the boss?" The room went silent. Gabriella felt every eye turn toward her. Before she could respond, Rachel stood up. "Trevor, that comment is inappropriate and completely false. Gabriella earned her position through exceptional work that you clearly cannot match. Maybe instead of making accusations, you should focus on improving your own skills." "Rachel is right," another colleague added. "I have worked with Gabriella for 2 years. She is brilliant and deserves recognition." One by one, more people spoke up in her defense. Even those who had been neutral before now stood against Trevor's cruelty. Damien, who had been standing quietly in the doorway, finally spoke. "Trevor, my office." Now, after the meeting, Gabriella found herself surrounded by supportive colleagues. Their kindness brought tears to her eyes. "You belong here," Rachel said firmly. "Do not let anyone make you doubt that." Standing strong together. That evening, Gabriella sat in her apartment, emotionally exhausted. Her phone rang. It was Damien. "Can I come over?" he asked. "I brought pizza and a terrible romantic comedy." 20 minutes later, they sat on her couch, eating pizza straight from the box and watching a movie neither of them really paid attention to. "I am sorry about today," Damien said during a quiet moment. "I never wanted you to face that kind of treatment. It is not your fault. People are going to judge. We knew that. I fired Trevor." Gabriella sat up straight. "You what?" "He has been written up multiple times for inappropriate behavior. Today was the final straw. He created a hostile work environment, and that is unacceptable." Damien took her hand. "I would have fired him regardless of our relationship. His behavior was wrong. People will say you did it for me. Let them say whatever they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. That is what matters." Gabriella leaned against his shoulder. "This is harder than I expected. Do you want to stop? End this before it gets more complicated?" His voice was carefully neutral, but she heard the fear underneath. "No," she said firmly. "I want to fight for us. But I am scared." "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "But I would rather be scared with you than comfortable without you." Building their future. Months passed. The gossip gradually faded as people found new topics to discuss. Gabriella proved herself repeatedly, delivering successful campaigns that earned praise from clients and colleagues alike. Her work spoke louder than any rumors. Damien was careful to treat her no differently than any other employee during work hours. But after hours, they built a life together. Quiet dinners in small restaurants. Weekend trips to explore new cities. Late-night conversations about dreams and fears. Gabriella discovered that Damien was nothing like the cold billionaire people assumed. He was funny and kind, passionate about social causes, and surprisingly good at cooking breakfast. He loved vintage cameras because his grandmother had been a photographer. He donated anonymously to dozens of charities. He called his mother every Sunday, just like Gabriella did. And Damien discovered that Gabriella was endlessly fascinating. She knew random facts about historical events, could quote entire passages from her favorite books, and made friends with every stray cat in their neighborhood. She was strong and vulnerable, brilliant and humble, everything he never knew he needed. The perfect moment. 6 months after that first kiss, Damien planned something special. He told Gabriella they were going to dinner, but he drove instead to the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. "Where are we going?" she asked, laughing. "You will see." They parked and walked to the middle of the bridge, where the city sparkled around them like a constellation. Other couples strolled past, tourists took photographs, and street musicians played soft melodies. "Do you remember the first time we really talked?" Damien asked, taking both her hands in his. "In my office, after your presentation?" "Of course. I was terrified. You told me about your parents' bakery, about building connections instead of just making sales. That conversation changed my life. He reached into his pocket. You showed me that success means nothing without someone to share it with. That being seen for who you really are is worth more than any amount of money. Gabriella's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. I'm not perfect. I work too much. I forget to eat lunch, and I still cannot figure out how to properly fold fitted sheets. He smiled through sudden tears. But I love you completely. I want to build a life where we support each other's dreams, where we face challenges together, and where every day feels as magical as that morning you wore a coral dress and changed my entire world. He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the sunset light. Gabriella Hayes, will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at once. Around them, strangers applauded. Someone whistled. A street musician started playing a love song. When they finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, Gabriella touched his face gently. Who knew that wearing the wrong dress to work would lead to this? It was never the wrong dress, Damien said, pulling her close. It was exactly the right dress at exactly the right time. It helped me see what had been there all along. Epilogue. 1 year later, Gabriella Pierce stood in front of the mirror in her childhood bedroom, adjusting the delicate lace on her wedding dress. Through the window, she could see the garden where she and Damien would exchange vows in less than an hour. Rachel appeared in the doorway, stunning in her bridesmaid dress. You ready? More ready than I have ever been for anything. Remember when you were terrified that wearing that coral dress would ruin your professional image? Gabriella laughed. Instead, it led me to the love of my life, in a corner office, and a promotion to vice president of marketing, and respect from every single person at Pierce Technologies. Rachel hugged her carefully, mindful of the dress. You did all that yourself. The dress just gave you the courage to be seen. Downstairs, music began playing. It was time. As Gabriella walked down the aisle toward Damien, she thought about everything that had led to this moment. A wardrobe crisis, a coral dress, an elevator ride, a presentation that changed everything. But really, it had always been about two people learning to be brave enough to be seen, to be vulnerable, to take a chance on love despite the complications. Damien's eyes filled with tears as she reached him. He took her hands, and she felt complete. You look beautiful, he whispered. You look pretty good yourself. The officiant began the ceremony, but Gabriella barely heard the words. She was too busy looking at the man she loved, the man who saw her completely and loved everything he found. When they exchanged rings and promised forever, when they kissed as husband and wife, when they turned to face their cheering friends and family, Gabriella knew one thing with absolute certainty. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you stop hiding and let yourself be seen. Sometimes wearing the wrong dress turns out to be exactly right. And sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected places when you are brave enough to believe you deserve it. As they walked back down the aisle together, starting their new life as partners in every way, Gabriella caught sight of that coral dress hanging in her old closet through the open door. She smiled. That dress had not changed her. It had simply revealed who she always was underneath. A woman worthy of love, success, and happiness. A woman strong enough to face challenges and brave enough to take chances. A woman who found her perfect match in the most unexpected place. And that, she thought as Damien squeezed her hand and smiled down at her, was the real magic. Not in the dress, but in finally having the courage to be herself,